Here is a brand new bike, and technically it's going to cost me absolutely nothing out of my own pocket. Instead, it's going to cost me exactly a certain number of food deliveries. We'll get to that in a bit. A massive amount of base miles and playing a very specific game with an algorithm. Welcome back to the channel. So if you're a cyclist or a runner, you know how ridiculously expensive the gear is going to get. So 3 weeks ago, I decided to do a bit of an experiment. Could I completely fund my new bike just by riding my old bike for UberEats on the side? So today I'm breaking down the exact strategy I used to make over £1,000 in less than a month. The numbers behind the base pay versus the bonuses and whether it's actually worth doing as an athlete. Let's talk raw numbers to start with, because this is where most people get tripped up by the side hustle videos on YouTube. So across 3 weeks, I hit a milestone target of exactly 100 deliveries. For those 100 drops, my base earnings from Uber were around £323. So if you do the maths, that's just over £3 a delivery. If I had just logged on and ridden in normal hours, trading my legs for £3 a pop, this experiment would have been a bit of a grind and quite time consuming. But the secret weapon, and the only reason this funded the bike so quickly, was targeting a massive new rider sign-up bonus. So the remainder of that £1,000 came from hitting the exact target the algorithm wanted. So I hunted that specific sign-up bonus, and it completely changed my valuation of the time. So as a runner who's now dabbling into a bit of cycling whilst running's put on hold for a bit with a slight bit of an injury, I've always wanted to know how this would affect my training. So can you get them endurance, them zone 1, zone 2 mileage like that you do in running with cycling by doing this UberEats experiment? And I think in some ways yes, and in some ways no. So you've got to look at the timing of this. So roughly I'm getting between 3 or 4 deliveries an hour. It depends on the app. How busy it is. If you go on say a Sunday morning when you've got McDonald's breakfast on, a Saturday morning's pretty busy, Friday nights tend to be pretty busy, or if you're going around that sort of 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock region where there's a bit of a rush for deliveries after work for meal times, you can get 3 to 4 deliveries in an hour, and it feels like you just constantly, you pick one up, you'll do a bit of a trip to the next one, and you're just picking up that easy endurance volume. But there is a bit of a catch. Because of the stop-start nature of getting these deliveries, it means you aren't getting smooth rides, you're not getting a continuous ride. So I typically go somewhere between 50 or 20 miles within the hour, and I'm finding that it's roughly about half of this. If I'm doing a 2-hour Uber shift, it's probably around 15 miles, but factor into this, you're waiting around a lot of the time. You've got heavy goods on your back sometimes if you're doing one of the supermarket drops. But if you're sticking to just the McDonald's or just some lighter deliveries, it doesn't hinder you too much. So what's the verdict now? I've hit my 100 deliveries within that 3-week period of signing up. So I think you get around a month in total, but I hit it just before with about 4 days to spare. So the verdict now is that it was working out at roughly £3 a drop normally, just over this, but the 100 delivery target that rounded up to £1,000 works out at £10 a drop. So it's quite a significant increase. You're pretty much 3 times in what you're making. So it was a good incentive to start with. Again, if you factor it into the fact that if you're on a bike, you're going off solely your own power. You don't need to pay an insurance that you would if you were driving your own car, and you don't have to pay for the upkeep of said bike as you do for the car. And just for full transparency, I'll go over a few of the costs. You've got an initial cost of setting this up, so you'll have to buy your own backpack unless you've got something suitable yourself. So you'll need something that's got sturdy straps on it. You'll need a sort of a square kind of rectangular shape that you can fit plenty of goods in there. But I opted for one that wasn't the official UberEats bag. It was slightly smaller than this. I thought that with going on the bike, if I had a huge bag that is built for delivering, say if you're on a motorbike or in a car, it's it keeps it so that I'm only carrying smaller goods and I can turn down those bigger orders. If someone wants to order their weekly shop, you won't get any more money for dropping that weekly shop off at someone's house as opposed to if someone had ordered just one item. So the other costs involved, I did buy a bike lock, but I actually found a existing bike lock that I got that was much smaller and much lighter. So I sunk around, I think it was about £25 into the bag. Got one off Amazon, which was a little bit cheaper than getting the official UberEats bag. The bike lock cost me about £10. It was a sturdy chain bike lock, but I felt that that was too heavy, as I'm only needing to secure my bike for the sort of minimal time that I'm in the shop. So I didn't feel comfortable leaving it outside certain shops, leaving it aside, say, the big supermarkets where you got a lot of foot traffic. I mean, you could be in there, say, 10 minutes at a time. So I felt a lock was necessary. Also found a good investment as well for it was to have the mount on the front of your bike. So you've got a mount that you can put your phone in. As the app runs solely off your phone, it was worth having it up on screen there. And when you could see where you were going, it was a bit of a game changer from the first shift that I did. It's a lot safer that you're not having to keep going into your pocket all the time. And it telling you the route the whole way. It's telling you any new orders that are coming in so you can pick them up. And it's just much more efficient to be able to have a clear case which covers it from any weather too. One thing that I already had was a decent power pack. So the app does drain your battery pretty quickly on your phone. So roughly 2 or 3 hours of Uber Eats would drain my battery almost from full to empty. It's quite hungry on the energy, and I do have quite an old phone anyway, so it wouldn't really last a full day of charge. So coupled with that, having a power pack was really good. I could slip it in the side of my bag and I could charge my power pack, charge my phone off my power pack, while I was waiting for the food. So if you were stuck waiting in McDonald's or the supermarket for a bit, I'd just walk in and plug my phone into my power pack. It was a bit more difficult because I couldn't mount it within the case. It was quite big. So I got through all right with that power pack. Any other sort of servicing things, I did have a flat tyre, so a new inner tube, a few quid here and there. It was probably on its way out anyway, that inner tube. And of course the cost of the bike. So the cost of that bike to me was a sunk cost. I'd already got that older bike and I didn't mind having the risk of it, that I was leaving outside places. It was maybe getting scratched if I was leaning up places. Sometimes you couldn't lean your bike up a place and you would just have to put it on the floor and walk up the customer's drive. Other than that, you could just kind of hold your bike whilst you're dealing with them and getting all the food out, which was a little bit awkward. So just a few things to think about there really. The costs from a startup cost probably cost me about £40 in total if you factor in that extra inner tube. So I'd soon made that back with the standard earnings within, say, a couple of short shifts there. But if you actually looked at the actual deliveries, it would have took 4 deliveries to pay back that £40 overall. So not really too much. It's just over an hour's work on the bike there. So your earning potential for Uber Eats, I think on the standard one, if we're talking about 3 or 4 drops an hour, it might be slightly less if you're just doing single drops, and you're getting roughly £3 a drop. You don't get too much more unless you take a really far drop that's quite far away from you. I was really looking at my app, and if it was much more over 2 miles for the drop, I would be declining it. I also took the strategy that I knew that all I had to do was get to 100 deliveries. So if there were double ups, I did even have 3 deliveries at once. I thought this was a good opportunity to boost up these numbers and get to that 100 deliveries quicker, because it didn't matter whether I took one literally from McDonald's to next door or from McDonald's 5 miles up the road. I'd have still got the same one delivery, £10 sort of charge from Uber there. So it made sense to do small little drops. So for full transparency, I'm not quite there with a bike yet. So I am only 3 weeks into this journey, but I've had a very good start that's been boosted by, I guess, for better weather, that you can get out on the bike. I'm not really going to go out when it's raining, which is often a busy period for Uber. So I've got to make hay while the sun shines, really, while we're in the summer, while we've got more light in the day as well, and really capitalise on boosting my numbers up whilst it's summer, because I don't think if it's iced over, if it's raining in winter, I'm not going to be able to get out on my bike and deliver. So if I'm strictly setting myself a 1 year target to make back the money for my bike, which was in the region of £2,500, I'm at £1,000 now, so I'm nearly halfway. But if you take off the massive bonus, I guess, there was for signing up, I'm really not too far there at all. So if I was to continue with this and try and get every penny of that money that I paid for my bike, I think I'd have a real job on my hands to, I'd have to do all of my cycling really would be delivering Uber Eats. And I think by then the novelty would have worn off slightly, and I'm getting probably about £10 an hour's worth. So if you work out that I've got £1,500 to get, you're talking about another 150 hours of work there. So it's quite a lot for me to do, for saying I've done 30 hours so far. And I think I would probably be doing less than I did in this period, because I was trying to capitalise on that offer. Like I said, I didn't want to leave that bonus of around £670, I think it was, that took me up from the money I'd made to the money to catch that guarantee. I didn't want to leave that on the table, so I probably did a few more deliveries than I'd normally do in that first sign up. And going forwards, I think I'll just pick it up here and there. I've heard that if you stay off the app for a while, they'll entice you back with offers, maybe sort of a bonus for doing some shifts again. So I'll weigh that up. I'll keep the app on my phone, but I'll put my feet up for a little bit. I've got a couple of weeks of holiday now where I'm going to enjoy some cycling. I'm going to also enjoy my new bike. So to get out and ride that a bit more was a lot more enjoyable than riding the older bike and stop-starting with the deliveries. So all in all, I think it's been a very worthwhile experiment. I've always wondered how it worked, whether it was profitable, and I've seen firsthand in 3 weeks how it all works. And roughly £10 an hour for cycling is pretty good if you're going to cycle anyway and you don't mind a little bit of stop-starting within your bike ride. I found that the time went probably even quicker than me just going out on the bike on my own. Sort of seeing it as a bit of a video game, seeing an order come in on the app, almost like a sort of Crazy Taxi or Grand Theft Auto kind of game that play in your childhood, and you're just kind of following the tasks that come in, treat it as a bit of a mission, but you can drop it off, and then working out the logistics of getting from one to the other. I found that I also learnt a lot of my local area with all the back roads and the cut throughs. So the app shows you where to go, but if you've done that route a few times, you'll find different ways of getting to places. So I know, for example, that Uber would always take me down this road because I was on the bike. We actually had a little footbridge on there, which was very difficult to get your bike across. So I've been stung by that a few times and making sure that I'm going to accessible roads. But there are also a few cut throughs through jitties, through the town centre, where you can sort of hop onto the pavement rather than waiting in traffic. That I think when you're in that urban area of the town makes you more effective than a car at delivering it. And if you couple that with not having to pay fuel, not having to pay an insurance, it makes it a more profitable venture. Other things to consider are the tax implications. So purely to make the math simple, I've used just the gross pay in there. I know that I'll have to set some aside to pay tax on that. If I've had £1,000 in, you'll charge that at your marginal tax rate. So Probably only going to keep about half of that. Realistically, if you factor in national insurance, tax, student loans, maybe even less than half of that. But just for purposes of this video, I've gone off the gross rate. It helps me out a bit. It makes it easier. I think if you went off the net pay, you'd really struggle to, get up to that 2,500 mark, and it would make it a very long journey. So just for simplicity, I've made that assumption there. So I hope this video gave you a good breakdown of my experience riding my bike for UberEats, whether it's worth doing as a sort of supplement to your training, hitting those zone 2 miles whilst you've got your McDonald's on your backpack, and then just adding a bit of money really. Cycling's an expensive sport, running's an expensive sport, so if you can claw it back a little bit while you're training anyway, I think it's been a worthwhile experiment and it's been a good idea for me to do. If this does interest you and you want to sign up, you want to do it, I can pop my referral link within the video. So if you click that and the offer is on for a referral in our areas, then we would both receive a little bit of a kickback from that, from UberEats. But really, I'm just sharing this for the informational purposes of my experience of what happened when I rode UberEats. And then if I was to do it before, I'd have loved to see a video like this where someone had given their experience on what had happened. So please do let me know in the comments how you got on, whether it was a good idea to do it in your area, and anything you think I might have missed on this video.